Sabado alas 4 ng hapon dumating ang dating senador at vice presidential candidate na si Bongbong Marcos sa Korte Suprema. Bitbit ng kampo ni Marcos ang 36 million pesos na paunang bayad kaugnay ng kanyang electoral protest laban kay Vice President Leni Robredo.
Ay isang taon ay masyado nang mahaba. Kaya sana ang ating mga magigiting na justice ay simula na ang proseso na paghuhusga kung sino ba talaga ang nanalo sa nakarang halalan. And I hope that this compliance that we have done to the Supreme Court's order will go a long way to getting the process started.
Kamakailan ay inatasan ng Korte Suprema na tumatayong Presidential Electoral Tribunal ang kampo ni Marcos na magbayad ng 36 million pesos pagsapit ng April 14, habang 8 milyong piso naman ang hinihingi sa kampo ni Robredo. Gagamitin ang halaga para sa retrieval process ng mga ballot box at election document. Nitong Lunes na lamang nakapagbayad ang kampo ng dating senador. Ayon kay Marcos, nanggaling ang 36 million mula sa kanyang mga kaibigan at taga-suporta. Sa kabila nito, plano pa rin ng kampo ni Marcos na maghain ng motion for reconsideration sa PET.
The calculation should be by clustered precinct. Ang ginawa ng Supreme Court is by precinct, which we don't agree with. And then the manner in which the order was given was parang masyado kaming minadali.
Hindi naman nagpatinag sa mataas na sikat ng araw ang mga masugid na taga-suporta ni Marcos. Sigaw nila muling bilangin ang mga boto sa pagka-vice-presidente noong nakaraang eleksyon. Samantala, inihayag ng kampo ni Robredo na handa silang tumalima sa desisyon ng PET. Pero iginiit nilang may nakabinbin pa silang motion for reconsideration na kumukwestiyon sa electoral protest ni Marcos.
Kailangan patunayan muna ni Mr. Marcos na talagang meron siyang marirecover na mga boto. Kailangan siya muna ang mag-deposit, siya muna ang magpabukas ng mga balota, at makita natin kung talaga merong basihan ng kanyang protesta. Bakit kami mag-deposit ng 15 million pesos? Pero pagkatapos pa naman, wala naman palang mangyayari.
66 million pesos ang kabuuang halaga na hinihingi ng PET mula kay Marcos. 30 million pesos pa ang dapat bayaran bago mag-July 14, habang 7.4 million pesos naman ang kailangan pang bayaran ni Robredo. Para sa PTV News, Pauline Recuesto.
36 million pesos, which is just half of the election protest fee. The Vice President's office says it isn't enough. Their lawyers explain why and butt heads in the process. You're watching Newsnight. The electoral battle between Vice President Leni Robredo and former Senator Bongbong Marcos drags on. Robredo's lead over Marcos, after all, was just a little over 200,000 votes. Supporters of Marcos staged a silent protest in front of the Supreme Court in Baguio City, where justices are meeting during the summer season. Protesters hitting the Chief Justice for supposedly delaying the release of the Presidential Electoral Tribunal's resolution. And now that Marcos made a deposit on the election protest fees, looks like things are shifting into high gear. Anjo Alimario has the details.
More than 50 supporters of former Senator Bongbong Marcos trooped here in front of the Supreme Court in Baguio City to call for justice for their losing vice presidential candidate. Most of them were from the Cordillera region, particularly from the Trinidad and Baguio City, and they formed a straight line here with their mouths covered with red tape. One of the tarps that they displayed here read, "Sereno, bakit mo tinago ang PET resolution? Sereno, why did you hide the PET resolution?" They hit Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno for allegedly delaying the release of the March 21 PET resolution. The lawyers of Marcos said they only received it on April 10, and in that resolution, the tribunal set the deadline for the payment of the first tranche amounting to 36 million pesos on April 14th, which fell on Good Friday. And the payment is used or will be used to enable Marcos's electoral protest to proceed. Still, Marcos was able to comply by producing the money on Monday. He has already appealed the fee for recomputation, and Vice President Leni Robredo also has a motion before the tribunal on the same PET resolution. She wants Marcos to pay 185 million pesos for his electoral protest. And here's a portion of our interview with one of Marcos's supporters.
Masyadong garapal yung ginawa ng Chief Justice Sereno para hinold niya yung saka lang naglabas ng Holy Week. Ganon. Kaya ito yung result niya.
The 15 Supreme Court justices also sit as members of the Presidential Electoral Tribunal. They are here in Baguio City for their annual summer session. Anjali Mario, CNN Philippines.
CNN Philippines learning the Vice President was at a security briefing by the armed forces in Campo in Quezon City. Earlier today, Robredo's office released a list of her meetings that the office said were not for media coverage. Former Senator Marcos is, according to staff, here in Metro Manila. No other details there, though. But their lawyers discussed the case with our senior anchor, Pinky Webb. Marcos's counsel even accuses Robredo's office of delaying the protest.
Yesterday morning, we were vetting ano ba talagang dapat natin i-file, motion for reconsideration or omnibus motion because if we don't pay, we will be putting his election protest at risk at baka ito ma-dismiss na ng Korte Suprema. So buti na lamang at nag-pool pala ng resources yung kanyang mga kaibigan.
Ang inyo naman pong contention, kasi 36 first installment, may susunod pa na 30 million dapat na bayaran si Senator Bongbong Marcos. Pero ang sabi nyo dapat 185 million pesos. Bakit po?
Kasi yung kine-question nila is not limited to the 36,000 na gusto nilang pabuksan, pero ang kine-question nila ay ang buong automated election system. At dahil nga dun sa pag-file po nila ng protesta ay natagalan or na-delay ang COMELEC sa pag-turnover ng mga makina sa Smartmatic na ngayon may question kung sino ang dapat magbayad ng 2 billion sa Smartmatic.
36, sila po 15. Tama
15
po?
million.
Oo,
Tama,
15
tama.
million. Eh, ang problema, hindi pa ho kayo nagbabayad, attorney, hindi ho ba sa Campi Vice President?
Hindi pa po. Humihingi pa kami, nakikiusap pa kami sa Korte Suprema na wag muna kaming pagbayarin dahil bago naman po ma-activate ang aming counter-protest, kailangan munang mapatunayan ni former Senator Marcos na nagkaroon ng dayaan at yung dayaan na yon ay nakaapekto sa election for Vice President.
So, ang nagiging problema, kung talagang handa sila at they maintain their position na walang nangyaring dayaan, I challenge them. Why don't you once and for all withdraw all the dilatory motions that you have filed? Simulan natin bukas ang judicial revision and recount. Tingnan natin yung tunay na laman ng balota.
Attorney.
Well, as I said earlier, that's unfair. Why accuse us of delaying the case? Kasi ang nakakalimutan po atang sabihin ni Ginoong Marcos and with due respect, Attorney Rodriguez, they filed their motion to set it for preliminary conference only ngayong January. They waited 6 months.
This Bongbong Marcos protest against Leni Robredo is only the 5th such protest in post-Marcos history, and none of the 4 previous protests, 3 of them presidential, the other vice presidential, prospered. The first protest was filed by Miriam Defensor Santiago against Fidel Ramos after the May 1992 elections. Santiago always believed Ramos cheated her, allegedly using what was known as the Sulu Hotel operations. But because Santiago ran for and won a seat in the Senate in 95, the Electoral Tribunal dismissed her protest. Santiago died late last year. Fernando Poe Jr. filed a protest against Gloria Arroyo after the May 2004 polls. Mrs. Arroyo had to contend with the accusations she rigged the elections, especially in the aftermath of the Hello Garcia scandal of 2005. But FPJ's protest never prospered and was eventually declared moot after he died in December 2004. An attempt by Poe's widow to substitute as petitioner was also rejected. The first vice presidential protest came about when 2 former broadcasting colleagues ran for vice president. Lauren Legarda asked the Electoral Tribunal to annul Noli de Caso's proclamation in the May 2004 polls. 4 years later, the protest was dismissed because Legarda missed a deadline allegedly to pay the protest fee, among other reasons. Mar Rojas filed a protest against Jojo Binay after the May 2010 polls, claiming the precinct count optical scan or PCOS machines in the country's first ever automated elections did not count 3 million votes. Ross claimed those votes would have wiped out Binay's 700,000 vote lead. By 2015, the tribunal took note of the fact that both Binay and Rojas ran for president. Ross's protest was eventually dismissed. Fee for his electoral protest, the lawyer of defeated vice presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos speaks with CNN Philippines. Attorney Vic Rodriguez said they're not giving up the fight. The lawyer of Vice President Leni Robredo insists Marcos should pay more. Our Joy Silas has that story.
Bongbong Marcos will file a petition to dismiss the counter-protest of Vice President Leni Robredo within the week over the former senator's election case. His reason, Robredo failed to pay last Monday the 8 million peso fee to the Presidential Electoral Tribunal for her counter-protest to proceed. Marcos earlier paid 36 million pesos to fund the recount in 27 provinces, covering more than 39,000 clustered precincts.
We are going to invoke Rule 33 that in case of failure to come up with the additional deposit required by the tribunal, the case may now be moved for, or rather the case may now be dismissed by the court.
Marcos's lawyer believes Robredo's counter-protest is a delaying tactic, and its dismissal would speed up the resolution of Marcos's poll protest. On the other hand, Robredo's lawyer says they are willing to pay the amount, but only after the tribunal resolves their motion to clarify the former senator's protest fee. Marcos needs to pay 66 million pesos and Robredo 15 million pesos in 2 tranches in April and July to fund their protests. But Robredo's lawyer claims Marcos should pay 185 million pesos, the amount needed to question the integrity of all vote counting machines in almost 370,000 precincts. A petitioner needs to pay 500 pesos per contested precinct.
Yung 36,000 kasi for recount lang yun eh. But is actually questioning the entire automated election system. So kung ganun, hindi ba dapat ang basihan ng pagbabayad is the 92,000?
With Marcos paying 36 million pesos to get the ball rolling in his protest case, how will Robredo pay 15 million pesos? Robredo's 2015 Statement of Assets, Liabilities, and Net Worth shows her net worth is only about 8 million pesos. Now a private citizen, Marcos can pay through donations, but the Code of Conduct for Public Officials bans Robredo from accepting gifts, loans, or anything of monetary value from any person while in office.
Does the Vice President have the capacity to pay for the 15 million?
No. That's why we need to discuss yung how we will come up with yung initial na lang muna na 8 million.
If the tribunal greenlights Marcos's protest, his lawyer claims 3 material witnesses will prove cheating happened in the vice presidential election. Joyce Ila, CNN Philippines.
You're watching Newsnight. Our top story tonight, the electoral battle between Vice President Leni Robredo and former Senator Bongbong Marcos drags on. Marcos says he's not giving up the fight. The Vice President insists Marcos should pay more. Our Nicolette Hanson has some of your reactions from social media.
Netizens took to Facebook to air their reactions to the electoral protest of former Senator Bongbong Marcos. Warren Tanedo says the recount should begin. He says Robredo has nothing to fear if she has nothing to hide. Rachel Ariate believes it is impossible for Marcos to have no votes at all in some parts of the country. She is questioning why Robredo filed a counter-protest. Facebook user Kunga Pajang says the cheater should reimburse the cheated candidate of all his expenses, plus interest and imprisonment if proven guilty. But for Lance Miranda, the election is over and the country has moved on. He says the electoral protest is just sowing discord among Filipinos. Swendy the Great says the money for the electoral protest should have been donated. She says the intention for the protest is clearly for power and not for public service. Stay in the loop with this story and more by visiting our website at cnnphilippines.com and our social media accounts at CNN Philippines.